All right, everybody, I'm here today on another episode of the Triaxle Podcast with Joe Casiuk from Mirabito-Gresham.
You got it.
I didn't butcher that?
No, you're good.
All right. So Joe is he's in insurance, and that is not everybody's favorite subject.
I'm sure everyone just turned this podcast off the moment they heard insurance.
We're talking insurance. So insurance, for me as a contractor, I was kind of a tough person to insure with all our different businesses that we had over the years. But it's a necessary evil, and without it, you could be in a world of hurt or in a lot of trouble, if you have the wrong event happen in your business. So welcome, Joe. We're glad to have you on, and happy to kind of mix it up a little bit and have a little bit different spin on today's episode. So thanks for coming in, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Obviously, everything that I've seen on the podcast so far has been a lot of business owners coming into the game and figuring out, how to become successful in an industry that, first of all, needs people to join it. Insurance is something that not everyone enjoys, wants to talk about. It puts me to sleep at bed, or at night. But it's something that I think that especially all types of businesses need to explore, take a look at, and discuss.
Yeah, I mean, it's necessary. It has to be done. When I started out, I didn't really know where to turn. I forget how I even got my first insurance policy. Probably just cold calling different companies, seeing if there was something that they did or didn't do. At one point, I remember I was with the State Workers Insurance Fund. That was a nightmare. Yeah. that was a bad experience.
Yeah.
And then I also had an incident. We had an incident in 2010 where we had an accident, and I found out shortly after that the agent who I asked to add a specific piece of equipment to my policy, he didn't do that. And luckily, there was no issues with it. We weren't at fault. It never came up. But that could have been a nightmare for me had it turned out differently, or had we been found at fault. As contractors, you put a lot of faith into the people that you trust to do these things for you, like your insurance agent, making sure you're covered properly.
Yep.
I very simply asked this agent to add a piece of equipment to my policy. He said, okay, never heard back from him. That was it. And then we had an accident, very unfortunately, and luckily it was not my fault, and nothing ever happened. But had it been, I don't know if I'd be here today. I might have lost my business. So
unfortunately, most people starting out in any type of business aren't sure where to go when it comes to getting the things that they need for insurance. A lot of people get online. They took a look at, the quick online systems. Let me get a quote. Let me see what's going on. Great. This looks like a competitive premium. This is something I need. Let me put it in place. They start paying for it. It's good to go. It isn't until an educated individual comes in who has experience to really see what is in place. And most of the time, people like yourself that, do quick call arounds and try to find insurance come to realize that what they're paying for isn't even covering what they need. Perfect example. I got a guy that I'm working with right now. He's paying $16,000 for an umbrella. And in the fine print, there is a specific exclusion excluding all of the work that he's doing. So he's paying $16,000 a year for literally a piece of paper that he can throw away that's not even going to cover him if it hits the fan.
If he has a catastrophic event.
If he has a catastrophic event, what he thinks is going to cover his business isn't going to help. And unfortunately, most business owners don't take the time to look through the endorsement pages and the added coverages. Most insurance companies will take what is known as a general ISO form, insurance service form. And then what they'll do is they'll make amendments and they'll make exclusions to take the 400 pages, add coverage, remove coverage, and do a bunch of stuff. Most business owners don't look at what is done in those pages, and they just think that, well, I have general liability coverage, I have auto coverage, I have equipment coverage, I have an umbrella, until they really get into the deep of it and go, well, crap, I'm not covered if something actually happens. And it's scary for any type of business to think about that because it is such a high cost.
Yeah. It is expensive, and when you don't need it, and quite frankly, it can be annoying. You pay for it. You're writing checks all the time for 5, 10, 15 years, and you never use it. And then that one time you need it, if you're insured properly, you feel great. But if you're not, then you could be very disappointed in the outcome of a claim or lack of a claim or however it gets done. Unfortunately,
right now, payroll, obviously payroll. You got to pay your guys, you got to pay your workers no matter what. But one of the top expenses that every business has is going to be a commercial insurance program. And that means your general liability policy, your auto policy, your umbrella, your workers' comp. If you offer employee health benefits, outside of fuel costs, there's really nothing else that's that big of an expense on your expense report. And like you said, if you pay for it year after year after year after year, most businesses are going, what the hell do I have this for?
Right.
Why I'm sending out 20, 30, 40, 50, $100,000, $200,000, if not more a year for a piece of paper. But if, excuse my language, shit hits the fan, you're going to call your insurance rep right off the bat to go, am I covered?
Right.
And that's why partnering with someone, or at least having a good working relationship with that person that you can talk to on a consistent basis that you trust is going to be a huge role.
Sure.
A business like yours, and this, you have an accountant for when you file taxes and when you do your paperwork. You have an attorney when you got to look at the laws and get a contract written up. You have a banker. Hey, I need money. Most business owners typically have a relationship with a banker that they can go to say, what can you do? An insurance agent is going to be that fourth person when ultimately things are going crazy. You're bringing into that conversation to go, how do we put this back together?
Sure.
What do we do?
Absolutely.
And making sure that, you have the right coverages in place and that you're doing the right things correctly is important for anyone in business.
Yeah, and I think it's often overlooked. I overlooked it for a while. I just wanted to do what was legal, make sure I had, the minimums, and then, as time went on, I became very difficult to insure just from a business standpoint because we had so many different operations. So that made us a little bit tough, and then that's how we eventually kind of came across you. And you were a breath of fresh air. You're very knowledgeable. You knew the industry, knew what I was talking about, knew the specific needs, and you don't always find that. And we have a dock building business, and we work over the water. That's a totally different ballgame than somebody building decks on land.
Yeah.
And for as long as we've been doing it, we've learned some hard lessons and some expensive lessons, to get to the right coverage and the right policy. So absolutely, just like the banker or the salesman or whoever, having the right agent can really make or break your business, if you were to have an incident, but also make it as painless as possible. Nobody wants to spend a lot of money for insurance. Every contractor is going to say, Joe, I want to spend less money.
I had a phone call on the way here that I was talking to one of my clients. The first thing he said is, I said, what are you doing? He goes, I'm trying to figure out how I can pay this insurance expense.
Yeah.
Just, picking on me.
Paying $50,000 a year for insurance. What can you do?
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
And I'm not here, obviously, to talk up our agency or do anything like that. I'm simply here to say anyone in the construction industry needs to build a relationship with their insurance representative so they can trust them, call them, talk to them on a consistent basis. And it is important, especially in the construction industry, that you find someone who specializes in this industry.
Right.
Contractors are not like a deli shop. They're not like an auto service station. They're not like a grocery store. There are a lot of underlying things that you have to know, understand, review, take a look at when it comes to insuring a contractor correctly.
Sure.
If people listen to this podcast, take away one thing, it's try to find someone that specializes in the industry, just because there is such a large exposure area compared to every other business that's out there.
Absolutely.
cost aside, and we can get into the changing contractor market, but as you know from a commercial contractor, contracts that you sign to work for someone have a lot of language involved. And making sure that you know that language as an owner, as well as being able to pass that off to an attorney who can also take a look at that language, as well as an insurance rep that can also take a look at that language to make sure you're covered. Once again, I can't say it enough. Just make sure in the construction industry that you try to find someone that knows the industry well.
Sure. And you have to be transparent too, to 100%. Make sure you're covered correctly. I mean, like for me, I had a couple, like from building docks to putting in sewer lines in municipal roads.
Yep.
We did everything in between. And my dock policy didn't cover my excavation policy, but digging for a new home foundation is not the same as digging around high pressure gas lines in the middle of the road either. And if I just said excavation and I had a gas line and I have a $50,000 claim, that's not going to be covered if I'm not rated or covered with the correct classification.
Correct. There are business owners out there that try to control their insurance expense as much as they can. And that is, as a business owner, you want to be as profitable as possible. But lying and withholding the truth, especially when it comes to insurance, can be detrimental to your business.
Sure.
I mean, not correctly, or at least not having the discussions about, yes, I do excavation, but I do high pressure lines. I do plumbing, but I'm also welding food processing pipe in or wastewater treatment plants. Having those detailed discussions and being upfront and honest, if there is a catastrophic claim, is only going to help you in the long run. It might raise your insurance expense. I'm not going to lie. It might increase a little cost, but ultimately it's going to help.
Yeah. I mean, in 25 years of business, I had a couple claims, relatively minor, but I was glad that I had it. And had I not been transparent as to the work that we were doing, they might have gotten denied, and I would have been paying those losses out of pocket. So that could have been rough.
As you've grown your business and as you've gone through the transition of one operation to another, to the crushing operation, to the dock operation, to the construction operation, I mean, what have you seen as a business owner in regards to the insurance, and has there been any major concerns, issues, point of contention outside the one claim that you had? I mean, from your own point of view, what have you come across?
I mean, the scariest moment for me was so we had a boat accident.
Yep.
We were involved in a boat accident, and my barge was hit by somebody, and it was a terrible accident. And I found out that it wasn't fully covered properly, but again, I wasn't at fault, and we weren't found liable. But still, like, that was the wake up call for me, that I just had, some agent. He probably insured a bakery, and probably insured maybe a school bus driver or, a school bus company. And then he insured, MHW construction. And he just didn't know exactly what to look for. And he felt as long as I had a general liability policy, I was covered, and that was not the case. So I found over time that it's just, the best way to approach it is just to kind of keep digging and kind of just make sure.
No pun intended, right?
But just keep, making sure that you are adequately covered and being transparent with the agent as to what you do. I mean, you or my previous agents never want to hear when I would add a new operation. Hey, we're doing rock crushing now. Throw that on my insurance policy. It's like, whoa, hold on a second, Matt. It's not that easy. And then you have to listen to me bitch about the cost and why is this so expensive? Well, you just added a couple $1 million worth of equipment and you're crushing rocks. It's a dangerous operation. So, I mean, specifically, what have I learned? Just the relationship, and to kind of understand what type of agent are you working with. Are you working with somebody that insures everybody in a kind of like a general setting, or are you working with somebody more specialized? And I think what we found with you guys is, you're very knowledgeable of the industry, contractors. And I think that is important, to try to find an agent agency that is geared towards your actual industry.
There's nothing wrong with a generalist, and I'm not here to bash other people out there in this industry. There are plenty of good people that I know in this industry that are generalists that do what they do correctly for their clients. But contractors, you're looking at equipment, you're looking at contract language, you're looking at umbrellas, you're looking at commercial bonding. Have you ever done any commercial bonded work?
Yes.
You're looking at commercial bonding, which is a completely different facet of insurance.
It's a whole nother animal.
A whole nother animal.
And the thing that always kind of like frustrated me was you as my insurance agent need me doing one thing. And then my accountant might want something else going on. And then my lawyer might want something else happening, and trying to get you guys all to agree while not just, spending tons of money to make sure everybody's happy and I'm, covered properly. That was a bit of a challenge too.
And we also have to understand is not everyone is going to have the opportunity to have the ability to have a banker, an insurance. Most business owners in this industry are going to wear many hats, so they have to know a lot. That's why building these relationships and getting someone that you can trust and understand is going to be helpful, especially for the smaller business that has 2 or 3 employees, 2 trucks and doing $500,000 a year. It's completely different. It's a completely different beast in terms of the operations that you have versus a business that is doing $5, $10, $15, $20 million a year, and the office staff that they have and being able to delegate and move some of those hats that the owner is wearing to other people in the business.
Sure. Absolutely.
And that's, our most businesses that we deal with. I mean, we insure everyone that whether it's a $500 policy or whether it's $1.5 million policy. We have premium all the way through there. It's businesses need to understand that it's an ever-changing landscape, though.
Sure. Absolutely. So we kind of jumped ahead a little bit. Let's take a step back.
Sure.
How did you get into the industry? You went to school to be a teacher, correct?
Yeah. We were actually just talking about this before we came on. I went to school to be a high school math teacher, got a bachelor's in math, got a master's in education, started doing student teaching and getting ready to take over my own classroom, and said, this isn't for me. Spent.
What made you realize that was it the kids? Was it the setting?
In all honesty, I don't have kids yet, so no offense because you're a dad, but it's the parents.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parents out there who are straight, just rude, bitter people. School districts as well, the control that school districts try to have over controlling how you teach, what you teach, and what you can do is just becoming more and more stringent. And at that time, I just said, this isn't for me.
And that was 8-10 years ago?
That was about, I've been doing insurance for 8. I did residential construction remodeling for 3. I did building material sales for a year. So this was about 12, 15 years ago.
Okay.
Is when I was actually in the school to be a teacher. I've grown up around this industry my entire life. My father owned his own, he was a tin knocker. He owned his own sheet metal business doing residential and commercial. Went too big, too quick. Ended up, robbing Peter to pay Paul, ended up going bankrupt after 7-8 years, so I've seen the downside of fast growth. My stepfather owned his own rigging business in Kirkwood, New York. He was up and down the East Coast, transporting heavy machinery, getting it out of locations, doing a lot of cell tower stuff. I've been around this industry for years, especially with business owners in the family. It wasn't until about 8 years ago that I was approached to become an outside sales rep for an insurance company that I decided to dive into it, and it's been history ever since.
Yeah. So how did you, obviously you've been in it for 8 years and you're learning something new every single day, but this
is one industry that is consistently changing.
Yeah. on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I find you to be, I forget if you reached out to us or if we found you. I forget how it happened.
Yeah, no, I stopped in here on a cold call.
Just random.
Just trying to drum up business, and just went from there.
Yeah, and we've been working with you. You guys have taken care of us. We found you to be extremely knowledgeable, and you knew what you were talking about, which is not something you get from every agency that will handle all different types of businesses. So how did you get so in tune with the contractor, with the construction and the excavation companies, and understand exactly how best to help them and cover them?
So the first company that I started with really threw me into the insurance world in terms of teaching me in a quick, 2-week, open the fire hose, drink as much as you can type thing. From there, it's just been simply throwing myself into the industry, into the construction world, into contractors, and figuring it out as we go along. Pretty much thrown to the wolves and have been learning ever since. For the last 4.5 years working for Mirabito-Gresham Insurance, the two owners have over 50 years combined experience. Super knowledgeable that I've been able to bounce off a lot of questions in regards to coverages at that point with them, and you just, soak it up and learn it as you go. Contractors have always been a ever-evolving field for me in terms of insurance, but it wasn't until probably 5 years ago that I started with the current agency that has really driven me into the construction side more and more.
So what you handle, you said anywhere from a $500 premium all the way up to $1.5 million. So you're dealing with young companies, old companies, new companies.
Yep.
So without, doing too much like a sales pitch here, what advice do you have? Our listeners are, all over, the business range, but we have a lot of younger listeners. So,
sure.
So for the younger guys coming in, or maybe the guys that maybe they're listening to this going, oh shit, maybe I'm not covered properly. Maybe I'm not doing the right thing. What advice do you have for business owners, especially the new ones coming in, on how to approach this and make sure they're getting the right coverage and the right company that they need?
The big thing that I can say right now is that $1 million in 2024 is not what $1 million was just simply 5 years ago. What we're seeing is a very, very large influx in claims value, meaning, a fender bender 5 years ago, you'd go to a pick-apart store and you would pull a headlight out for $25 and you put it in yourself. Now, a front headlight on some of these new trucks are $1,500 a piece.
If you can even get it.
I
had to get a freaking taillight for my wife's 2018 Chevy Traverse. It was not available from Chevy.
Yep.
We had to buy it off eBay. I want to say it was like $450, and that was the best price that we can find. And I had to take off the rear quarter panel to put it in. It was a
process.
It was a process. But you used to just pop the taillight out and put a bulb in, and that was it. Nothing happened to her taillight. It just burned out. It's not like she smashed it. And I'm pretty handy, so I was able to do it. But if I wasn't, you're talking $1,000 bill, if not more, just to replace a taillight in a car. That's how insane these prices have gone.
And that's what we're seeing from an insurance standpoint is, first of all, for the new businesses starting out, or for the young owners, the people just getting into the industry, there are minimum insurance requirements that I think every business should have. Obviously, a business doing $15 million in sales is going to be completely different than what we're talking about right now. Depending on the vehicle type situation, have $1 million in auto liability coverage. Your biggest exposure is you getting in your vehicle, or one of your employees getting into your company-owned vehicle and driving it down the road. You're literally putting everything in the hand of one of your drivers. Don't be afraid to run an MVR. Make sure that, if they're a friend, great.
Still run an MVR.
But still run an MVR. Because people lie.
Yeah.
People aren't always truthful, and there might be some speeding tickets. There might be a DWI. They don't want you to judge them, so they're not going to tell you, but run an MVR to make sure they're clean. But have $1 million in terms of auto coverage. General liability, have $1 million. You can go out and you can find, a $300,000 policy, a $500,000 policy. But once again, what does $500,000 get you in 2024? Hardly anything.
Not enough. And that's funny that you say that about the NVR, because I had a friend of mine that worked for me when I was young in business, probably going back like 15 years. Great guy, phenomenal worker, but he had a couple, personal incidents with DUIs. And my insurance company at the time, they were going to drop me. They said they were making it so expensive for me to employ him. I had to make the hard decision, and we kind of both just agreed, like with some other issues going on, like it was time for him just to move on. He was too expensive for me to employ because he was going to make my rates go up so high. And he was in the type of position where he had to drive the truck. So it didn't make sense for me to just make sure he was getting a ride around everywhere. But yeah, one employee, their bad driving record totally changes the game, like big time.
Whether it's an accident and you're caused to non-renew and you got to go out and find new coverage, whether it's increased rates, just do your due diligence as an owner and just make sure that the people driving your company vehicles are decent drivers.
And for new hires, like, if you have an employee, you're probably going to maybe hear about an incident that they have, potentially, depending on how serious it is. But for these new guys coming in, don't just hire somebody and throw them in one of your trucks and let them go. You have to do your research on them.
For the bigger businesses that have the money to do this, there are third-party carriers that provide MVR monitoring. Look into that. There are programs that you can register with that will literally monitor your drivers on a consistent basis. So you're automatically notified if there is an accident, if there is a speeding ticket, if there's a DWI. So if they get into an accident on Saturday with a company vehicle, or even in their own vehicle, they get a DWI and they come in Monday and they get to jump in a truck, you can say, I don't think we're going to be doing that this week.
Right.
So, look into resources like that for the bigger companies. Not everyone can afford it, which I get, but still do your due diligence on the front end to take a look at that stuff.
Sure.
Work comp obviously is a big thing. Everyone needs it. You got to make sure that your employees are protected while they're on a job site. And once again, an umbrella. There's a very, what I always recommend is consider the value of your business. Your umbrella in your commercial insurance program should at least cover the value of your business. If you have a $5 million business, if I walked in and say, hey, if I cut you a check today, what would you need to just pick up your coat and walk out, and you say $5 million, you better have an umbrella that covers that.
That makes sense.
Because if there is a catastrophic claim, you either want the insurance paying for it or you're selling the business to pay for the judgment that's against you at that point. So, it's a wide range on what a business should have. The only thing that I can say is that a good starting point would be $1 million general liability policy, $1 million auto, statutory work comp rates, whatever your state recommends or makes you have, at least have that. And then based on the size of your business, an umbrella coverage. We can get into the equipment and stuff, but that's all ancillary and on top of what I feel is standard or should be standard.
Sure. That's good advice. And then you get into, commercial trucking, then it's a whole different ballgame. When we were one type of business for so many years, and then I started adding CDL vehicles, dump trucks, flatbeds, and that again, changed my premiums and changed everything else. There's so many little things that can change. We at one point we were a subcontractor hauling rigs rig mats for the gas companies. And then, that same company wanted us to haul a load of pipe one day. And I was like, yeah, sure, we can do it. And then somehow I forget what came up, but my agent found out, and they're like, "You can't haul that pipe. That's a totally different ball game, hauling pipe versus rig mats." So we opted not to do it because the expense for my policy to be able to legitimately, legally, and be insured properly to haul, drill pipe was a different story, at least for that particular policy that I had.
Yeah, I mean, lowboy work and flatbed trailer work compared to dump truck and aggregate hauling are really the two big differences that we're seeing now. Driving down the road with stone, dirt, asphalt, we're seeing more claims come out of that because stone falls off, smash a window. That's where a lot of concern and a lot of high rates are coming from. But yeah, you are going to have that situation where you have a flatbed, you have a lowboy. Hey, on the way out, take these mats, but can you bring this pipe back? Once again, it's understanding what's in that policy to make sure that it's covered.
And you want to say, yeah, you want to do it.
You don't want to pass up the money that you can get,
sure,
right?
Sure. But if a piece of pipe, flies off the trailer through your truck, and I get it. But as the business owner, I'm like, son of a bitch, it's just one more way to bleed me and take my money. Like that's how you feel. But for me, it was not a full-time business. It was like, a side thing, and it just didn't make sense. So we decided not to do it.
We don't like, as me at least, I don't like coming into a business saying, your rates are going up again. It is cost. We try to do everything we can do to try to mitigate that expense. But with all the operations that, for instance, you had, as well as maybe some other businesses, unfortunately, it's just the cost that people have to. Good news is you can write it off as a business expense. So
yeah. It's one thing you and my accountant would agree on.
It's always helpful there.
And there's a difference too. You were saying the difference between like stone dump truck work and then like lowboy work too. I mean, I find a lot of new drivers are going in dump trucks. They're going in the straight axle trucks, the smaller trucks, where if you have a truck going down the road with a crusher on it and they're running 120, 140,000 pounds, you're going to have a pretty experienced driver.
Yep.
You're going to have a professional driver in that truck. So is that something that the insurance companies not only realize, but do they look at? Like, do they understand that a dump truck typically, like, you could have a veteran, very skilled driver in a dump truck, but typically that's where like a lot of the young guys, the new guys are going to go. They're not going to get the keys to the lowboy to go move the D8 down the road.
Unfortunately, no. Typically, when it comes to understanding the auto rate side, it's going to come down to weight of a vehicle.
Okay.
The dump trucks are going to be 30, 40 pounds or more gross vehicle weight. Typically, a truck tractor without a trailer is going to be a little bit less than that, just the cab itself. But there's no real difference in terms of, thought process behind the lowboy, and the truck tractor is going to be a little driven by someone a little bit more competent rather than just a standard straight axle.
Okay.
That doesn't come into effect.
Gotcha. Okay.
Once again, MVRs, clean MVRs, an 18-year-old is not going to be able to drive a CDL truck. 21, 22 is going to be rated higher than a 50-year-old with 20-some years experience.
Sure, that makes
sense.
sense.
Most carriers aren't going to rate off of the age of the driver and the experience that they have, but at least you as a business owner should at least sleep a little bit better at night knowing that someone has 20 years experience rather than right out of the driving academy or whatever. Sure. I know New York now you can get it at 18. You got to go through their whole driving academy, but they're letting 18-year-olds, I believe, only get their Class B. So we're seeing a lot of younger kids coming through. It's still train them. It's still make sure you do ride-alongs with them. And
Sure. Yeah, I think I have not been keeping up on the CDL stuff around here, but I do know now you actually have to go through training, like a class. You can't just get it. Like for years, I mean, I got mine by just taking the test and then going and taking the road test. And that's how I got a bunch of my guys, their CDLs. They just, got their permits, learned on my trucks, and they went and took the test, whether it was through PennDOT or like a third-party agency. But now you actually have to go to a school.
And it's probably all, because that's all federally mandated anyways. I'm sure it's across all states like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've had this discussion, whether it's truck drivers or whether it's just employees in general. No one can find valid, good employees. So they're lowering the standards a little bit and making sure that they go through the checkpoints to get them to a more standardized rating or level across all levels. But you still got to do your due diligence as an owner.
Sure, absolutely. Interesting. I feel like, well, and I'm not in like the over-the-road trucking business, never was, but I feel like the standards in that area are going down because there's lack of people to do it. We can dig in.
I mean, DOT is a tough thing to deal with when it comes to over-the-road truckers. I can tell you on an insurance side, it's not something that a lot of people want to write. Unfortunately, anyone with a large auto fleet is having a tough time right now. Auto rates are going through the roof, whether it's over-the-road truckers, whether it's construction companies with 20 vehicles. You know, the average cost of insuring a dump truck now is $2,500 a year for full comp and collision coverage on it.
So would that be like I know companies,
per vehicle.
They have 50 Triaxles. So that's times
5,
the
10, 15, 20 vehicles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're actually seeing companies, they're having a hard time getting insurance potentially, let alone the cost of it.
The insurance landscape right now, whether it's for over-the-road truckers or whether it's for contractors, is quickly shrinking. And it's making it more difficult for people to get competitive premiums with adequate coverage, which is driving cost, obviously, through the roof.
I have a theory on this is kind of like my own theory on the Federal Motor Carrier Administration and what they've done to the trucking industry. It is my opinion, in my observation, that by them trying to make the industry safer, they've actually made it worse for the public on the highway. And my reasoning is this. Truck driving, especially years ago, you had guys that really took pride in their truck, took pride in what they did. Kind of like the old school, like cowboy, trucker, like guys going across the country.
Yeah.
There was a lot of guys that they were owner operators or they worked for other companies, and they really, took pride in what they did. And they were, I can't speak for how good they were or safe, but what the government has done with the e-logs and putting DOT at every exit and every corner, a lot of these guys, quite frankly, they don't want to be bothered with this shit anymore. They don't want to be hassled. I was pulled over by DOT several times. We got a $13,000 fine for running one of our dump trucks on a local road here. That's not an enjoyable experience. It's miserable. And I feel like a lot of the guys that were like the really good drivers, they really had an interest in it. They liked the trucks. They liked seeing the country. And I'm kind of talking over the road here again. Now they're being mandated with these e-logs. They can be half an hour away from their home to sleep for the night, and they have to pull over and shut the truck off. They are hassled by DOT on the sides of the roads, for simple, little things sometimes that really shouldn't go as far as they do. And it ruins their day and gives them $1,000 fine. And don't get me wrong, I am all about trucks being safe, being operational, having the right brakes, and making sure they're not falling apart. But some of these horror stories we hear, in our group, mud flaps being too short, or windshield washer fluid being below the halfway level, or almost running out. Like some of this stuff, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is a lot of guys that really enjoyed this, they've made it not enjoyable for them, and they don't want to do it. So now they're grabbing whoever they can to fill these seats. And in my eyes, it's making the roads more dangerous for my family to be on, because a lot of these guys, they just don't have the experience and they're not trained properly, but they'll deal with the bullshit that the industry is making them do.
And that's not even over the road. I mean, it's
everything.
That's everything.
It is everything.
Unfortunately, and I'm not trying to get political at this point, but, you have, whether it's a state government, whether it's a federal government, trying to get their hands in on and control as much as possible. I 100% agree, tire depth, tire wear, brakes, you got to make sure you're not overheating in regards to that, However, when is enough? When can we just say, all right, go out, do what you can do, and make sure it's safe? Don't get me wrong, there are those people out there that run wide open.
Sure.
And, but it's those people that run wide open that have caused all of this, snowball effect to catch up with the people at the bottom who are safe, good businesses, because some schmuck 3 states over runs it wide open, doesn't care,
sure,
and has caused, millions of dollars in damage.
I mean, don't get me wrong. If we're going to talk about over the road, you have the guys that manipulate the logs and they'll run coast to coast in 2 days without taking any sleep. That's not a good idea, nor is it safe. It gets done, but what that has done has contributed to the e-logs and the fact that you can only go so far. And it's, usually when the government gets involved, they don't make it easier and more enjoyable to be in that industry. They put a lot of pressure on.
I mean, look at California. They're only allowing electric vehicles to go into some of these shipping yards to pick up trucks. I mean, or to pick up containers.
I haven't seen that, but I do know specific pre-emissions trucks. I have heard, and I'm not speaking with any facts or real knowledge, but that some of these trucks, they simply can't even go into the state anymore. So how does that help the industry when we're already short on drivers and we're short on people to move?
And it's only going to come worse. Not and we're focusing on, we're talking a lot about over the road right now, but getting back to the construction side of things, it's only going to become worse because the people that are available to fill these jobs, the average age, as mentioned before, the average age of a contractor is 55? Mid-50s?
55 to 60, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years, all those people are out.
Sure.
And there's going to be no one coming in to fill those up. And I'm happy I'm on the outside with the paperwork side. I feel bad for anyone that owns a construction business right now trying to fill these positions that are quickly becoming vacant.
Right. And, yeah, we were kind of talking about the DOT. I mean, it's everything around here, the local guys. So now we're not talking over the road. We're talking local.
Yeah.
My buddies that are in the business, they can't stand it. They're harassed. They're it's really a negative it's been a negative thing on the industry, how heavy of a presence they have now. And trust me, I'm not saying that it should just be a free-for-all. I do not want a dump truck without any brakes smashing into my wife's car with my kids in it. But some of the overreach, it's just going a bit too far. And it's just making it tough. So people that used to be interested in doing this, I've had guys working for me, and they're like, I don't want to drive anymore. I don't want to be hassled. I don't want to be pulled over. I don't want to deal with this nonsense that I know Joe from this other company had to deal with. They're just making it not enjoyable to be a driver or be in that industry at a time when we need them the most because of the retirement and because of all the work that's out there, the lack of employees that are available. So I feel like it's a tough thing to navigate for sure.
You're going to have to get someone on here from DOT to sit down with you and have that conversation.
I don't know if they're coming in there.
They're going to want to talk to you a little bit more about that.
Well, that could be a good episode. Maybe we should have them come in.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone wants to listen to or hear insurance talk, but I'm sure not a lot of people want to hear DOT.
Maybe if any DOT guys are listening, reach out and let me know if you want to jump on and tell me your side here, because we know you're not all bad. Just some of you are bad. But yeah, it's tough. And with we were saying before that people are retiring, people are leaving the industry, and with that is a lot of aggravation and an annoyance to the people in the industry, but there's also tremendous opportunity.
Yep.
There really is. If you look at everything as a negative, then that's what you get out of it. I'm telling people, we're a big advocate for the trades. We have a scholarship for the trades. I'm not looking at the the retirement and the mass exodus from the industry as a negative. I think it's a positive for kids. I have a 10-year-old son. If he, in 10 years, he wants to start getting into one of the businesses that I was in or something else, if he wants to work hard the way I did, there's going to be even more opportunity for success than I had because there's going to be less competition. So it's a negative for sure, but I think there's also a huge benefit for the people that are willing to work.
I'm coming at this from two directions here. One, being raised by two people in the trades and seeing the complete lack of employees that are coming through, good, educated, talented employees, it is a huge, huge, huge open window for people like your son who, in 10, 15 years are going to literally have every opportunity that they want to do if they want to get into the trades. I am hopeful that there are enough young people who realize that you don't have to go to college. I'm $140,000 in student loan debt that I don't even use. I have a master's in education. I'm sitting here talking about insurance.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell,
Yeah. And you're not afraid to say that.
Right.
Yeah.
But I hope that moving forward, there is more of a direction into pushing the trades on younger kids.
Yeah.
From an industry standpoint, I am worried that these conversations about cost of insurance are going to continue to happen because what most insurance policies are based on are payroll exposure. And it's what you pay your employees. And if your average employee pay is going up because you have to pay people more to fill these vacant positions,
then your rates are going up.
Your insurance costs are going to go up.
So not only do you have to pay employees more just to keep your doors open and keep providing the service that you do, but then your insurance goes up. And it's like for the small business owner, the costs are just going up and up and up.
And that's retention. Employee retention is huge. If you can invest in who you currently have with training, with, a paid vacation, employee benefits, life insurance, whatever it might be, if you can offer those ancillary benefits, yes, they're a cost to you as a business owner, but if you can retain, maybe that'll help some of the issue. Because that way, if you can keep these people, you might not have such the drastic increase in payroll expense as you're trying to bring in these new people.
Sure, absolutely. And turnover is costly.
Especially on insurance side, it more turnover means the higher probability of more accidents.
Sure.
If you have a good, safe working group with low employee turnover, most of the time that business is not having a lot of claims.
So we're getting sidetracked a little bit here, which is totally fine.
Back and forth.
It's my podcast, and we can do what we want here. But before we were talking before, and you had a really good vision or idea for young people, their junior year, going and trying out some different areas. Lay that out for me again, the way you did before, because I think it's an interesting concept, and we are getting to the point where I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to the fact that college is not what it used to be. It's not what it is presented as. And I think a lot of people are probably listening to this and realizing, I have student debt too, and I went to school for this, and I don't even use that. I think a lot of people are starting to realize, as long as you're willing to work hard, do the right thing, college is not for everybody.
No.
And it wasn't for me. I went for a year, then I left, and I did just fine. I can tell my son, he's kind of like his father's son. I would be shocked if he went. I support him whatever he wants to do. But there's some professions you just don't need it for. What was your concept? What were you telling me before?
All right, and that will conclude part 1 of the 2-part series for episode 13 of the Triaxle Podcast. Be sure to follow up next week at the same time, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, for part 2 of the series.